All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the ConnectWise Mastery Series for Business Management. Today, we are going to be running everything Ask Me Anything style, and we're going to go ahead and get started with our first topic for the BMS Mastery Series here. We want to go ahead and do service. So for today, first of all, my name is Neil Perkins. I'm on the education team. I'm based out of Tampa. I'm a SME over on the business management side. I spent the last 8 years in consulting. And my favorite thing about the system is that help button in the upper left corner there. In here with me today is Gabe Cortez. You want to go ahead and...
Yep, thanks. Yeah, so I'm also based out of Tampa here. Been with ConnectWise for 10 years. A good chunk of that time was over in the support team, where I was a team lead. And then as of last year, I came over to Partner Success, taking that skill set over, helping our partners, get the most out of their product.
Awesome. We do have a special guest on for today. We've got Darren with us over here from the product team.
Yeah, so I'm based out of Minnesota. I've been with ConnectWise for about a little over 2.5 years. I came from a managed service provider where we were using our products for a long time. I am on the product management team, primarily overseeing like ticketing and email.
Awesome. So yeah, like I said, today's entire chat that we're going to have today is going to be focused on services here. We do want to run essentially a partner-driven agenda today. We do want you to be able to ask us anything that you have in terms of questions about services. That being said, to avoid putting anybody too much on the spot, obviously we did come with some previously asked questions that we've heard over the years and wanted to make sure that we can at least get the ball rolling with some of those. So one of the things that we definitely get asked as we go through, and between my experiences and Gabe's experience especially, is there a way to help me assign tickets more efficiently? It's definitely something that comes up decently often. A lot of people are trying to make sure that they get tickets sent to the correct resources in a timely manner and really kind of speed that whole process up. Now, I do know one of the newer features that has been out to definitely help with this scenario is the whole round robin ticketing system that you can use. It works with the auto assign feature so that you can have tickets come in and get parsed out to your team accordingly. It's got a couple of different features in there. One, of course, is it will just go through, ticket A goes to the first resource, ticket B goes to the second, but you can configure it if you're using skills in ConnectWise as well, so that it actually does pay a little bit more attention of trying to get the right ticket to the right resource. Gabe or Darren, if you guys have any more details on that, I'd love to hear about them.
Yeah, I can jump in here. So yeah, you can do scale mapping at the type, subtype, and or item layer. Unlike auto templates, you can do any one of the three. You don't have to do all three. And on top of that, it's based off their managed calendar. So it's going to schedule a ticket out for 30 minutes as long as whoever's the next available resource. So if they're blocked off, for the next 2 hours, it'll skip them for the next 2 hours and assign to other people. You can also use workflow rules if you want to schedule out tickets using the round robin feature as well. Again, only for service tickets, so not for project tickets. If you just use assign team as the action and you choose a round robin team, it'll continue to use the round robin logic as well.
Oh, that's awesome. No, definitely pretty exciting stuff there.
And if you tried to use the 2 months ago and it didn't work, that's
gotcha. Yeah, no, just a reminder, obviously, to anybody you can always type any questions you have come up in that questions box over there. We've got a couple more, but then I can go ahead and unmute everybody and let you just ask questions. But I figure if anything's, initially, you can go ahead and throw it in that box. And then from there, obviously, we can move to just letting people unmute. So in addition to stuff with round robin and the ability to assign those tickets a bit more efficiently, we've also got, how do I get the most out of my SLAs is another big question that we tend to get. Couple different answers, obviously, to this one. One of the first I always suggest to anybody is make sure that you have them planned out. They don't necessarily need to be published to your clients quite yet. but you want a rough idea of what you're looking at. One of the things that I've definitely done back in my time when I was doing implementations is make sure that you have some sort of SLA configured in the system, even if it's an entirely internal SLA. These are the numbers that we're running, that we're keeping track of. That way you're going to be able to start to leverage some of those reporting numbers and get an idea of where your actual response times or your actual plan goals or your resolution times are as you start to continue to plan those. So I think the default one that kind of comes in the system is like 4 hours to respond, 8 or 16 hours to plan, and 40 hours to resolve. And that is on a business hours timer. Something like that gives you some rough goals to make. They should, for the most part, hopefully be fairly attainable goals for you and your team. But as you get into some of the reports, like the SLA performance by service ticket report, as an example, that's going to be able to give you some hard timers. You know, what's the average I have to hit a response timer, to hit a plan timer, so that you can use numbers like that to kind of really fine tune it down for when you're ready to really start to use it from a marketing standpoint and tell your clients that, you know, we're going to guarantee as part of your SLA, let's say, a 1 hour response time. If you've got hard data that shows that your average response time is in the 30 to 45 minute mark, it makes it a really easy goal to attain and something that you can now promise to your clients to say, look, we're going to get to your ticket within an hour. You know, if on average you're closer to 30 minutes, it just makes you look that much better. The last thing you want to do is give a 30-minute response goal timer if your average is closer to 40, and suddenly you're going to potentially end up with unhappy customers when previously they didn't have any issues because you suddenly now gave them a goal that you needed to hit. What about you, Gabe? Over on the partner success side, is there any sort of automation or anything you guys usually see with SLAs?
There's some overrides you can do with SLAs too, but one of the cool things about it is I always recommend a good reason to have them set up is to run reporting off of that, whether it's tracking your response times, resolution times. It's always good to see, even if you aren't exposing them to your customers, you can still track how your team is doing, but those numbers have to be set at some point so that you can then report on them and track it.
Yeah, absolutely. Being able to track that on your own, obviously to a certain degree, being able to potentially show your clients, hey, you know, this is where we're hitting these, is definitely going to be a big one as well, I imagine.
Another good one too is actually using workflow rules, because you can set up triggers in there to actually run off of the SLA timer about to be missed. So you can set your own threshold, and based on the threshold you set, once that time gets pretty close, then you can have a workflow send you an action, send out an email or create an activity, have someone follow up and look into those tickets to make sure that the timer doesn't get missed. So that's always a good thing too, is having them in place and then running workflow rule actions off of those.
Yeah, I mean, definitely sounds like something I would want to have in place to make sure that before I run into an issue, someone's made aware. I mean, definitely sounds like emails could work. I mean, I'm pretty sure from a workflow, you could even potentially escalate a ticket automatically, you know, assign a dispatcher back to it or something like that to get it moved. Definitely a number of pieces I feel like you can utilize there to really get the most out of what you got going on. So that's always exciting. Okay. Oh, in addition to obviously some of the SLA pieces and some of the ticket assignment pieces, we also have, how can the system help me with automatically updating clients? And I mean, from my end, there's obviously a couple of potential answers here. One of the first that always comes to mind, and it's probably one of the more basic pieces, but still important, is the status notification, right? You change the status on a ticket as part of your normal process, and that automatically sends an email out to either a client or even an internal resource that you can run into there. So it really gives you the advantage of being able to save your tech some time, but continue to have that open communication with either your clients or, of course, internally, depending on the specific process we're looking at. It's also something where I've seen workflows come in and play a decent role there. And those can take any number of different forms, essentially, because at that point you can have something as simple as essentially a replacement style effect to something like a status notification. Tickets in a certain status, send this particular email. You can add some additional complexity to it with things like ticket was last updated or some of those other options that you can utilize at that point. You can also take advantage of using them for reminders as well. So, classic that we tend to recommend, it's usually, I think, Gabe, on the top list that Partner Success tends to suggest for workflows that you want to turn on. Standard is ticket hasn't been updated in 3 or 5 days, and is still in waiting on customer, right? So the idea being to help with those stale tickets, it gives that kind of automated reminder out to your clients to let them know that we are in fact waiting on information from them so that we can work to resolve their issue, things like that. Any other pieces in particular in terms of, communicating with clients from that more automated fashion that you remember there, Gabe?
Yeah, I actually have a top 10 list of workflows that I would recommend to have set up, in particular for the service desk department.
Okay.
I'll get that information into the chat to share with you guys.
Oh, perfect.
But it covers a bunch of stuff, like Neil mentioned, some of the, waiting on client response, kind of to make sure the tickets that you are seeing are still ones being actively worked and not falling off to the wayside. So it keeps everything on track for you without you having to search around too much to make sure, hey, what's going on? You kind of set the workflow and then do the work for you at that point. But I'll definitely get this information to you guys in the chat here in a minute.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So in that, let's through some of those initial questions, hopefully kind of get the juices moving, get some decent information out there. I'm actually going to go ahead and set it so that everybody can unmute themselves if you actually have a question instead of wanting to type it in. But I mean, here's the rest of the session. We want to go ahead and let you ask us anything about service today.
I actually have an item related to that last one that I just wanted to cover real quick too. So we have a new feature that just was released within the last few weeks here around bundling tickets, primarily aimed at trying to help out with incident tracking. So you've always been able to bundle tickets across multiple companies, across multiple tickets. That's been around for a long time. Recently, we added the ability for you to notify those child tickets from like a master ticket or a parent ticket, where you could create your time entry or your note from the parent ticket. And when you check a box underneath kind of that CC field, it will send an email out to all of the child tickets, but it sends it from the child ticket. So your individual customers will not know that, there's 50 different companies attached to this. They're only going to see as though it came from their ticket. So that's one item that's new. And then related to that, we also enhanced the status aspect of it. So if you change the parent ticket status, it will also prompt you to change the status of all the child tickets as well. It's not just on a closed status. So this will help if you're trying to track, an outage like we had last week, with the big nationwide or global outage. If you had a whole bunch of tickets all related to that, you wouldn't have to manage each one individually.
No, that's awesome. Thank you very much on that one, Darren. I think that's something that I would definitely plan on making better use of. All right. Anybody from the listening audience at home here want to go ahead and chime in? Questions, concerns, kind of anything? Like I said, we're focused on the service desk today. We're going to rotate topics as the weeks go by. So, I mean, definitely if you've got more stuff looking for like finance and procurement, that's just potentially going to be a later date, similar format that we're going to go through there. But yeah, floor is open. Anybody who has questions should be able to just go ahead, unmute and let us know, and go from there. All right. So while everybody's still thinking, Darren, I noticed in the chat that you dropped where you mentioned the whole auto templates. Is that something that you guys are utilizing and definitely recommend that we pair in with kind of the round robin features you mentioned earlier? Or is it just truly independent and they don't really have too much to do with each other?
They're independent. The auto templates piece helps out with the SLAs, those, because if you can then set your priorities automatically, and your priorities can tie to different SLA timers.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds pretty good. And I mean, in general, in terms of being able to get all this piece together, is that something you'd probably want to use in tandem, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Auto templates are extremely helpful. You can set up automated tasks as well, based off of the ticket type. there's a lot of different options within there, and Priority was one of the newer ones that I wish existed when I was still a customer, because we did it much more painfully with using internal notes.
Yeah, one of the go-to examples I had for auto templates back when I was in implementation was the workstation installation, right? I can already have a checklist of things you want to go through built into it. I can have type, subtype, and item already configured. A lot of times you can drop that internal note in there automatically that's like, hey, make sure you go through the checklist, or make sure you adjust this piece. And to certain degrees, you can even make those custom to an individual company if you needed to. So, those are pretty fun. You can also potentially use them, not the company-specific ones, but those can be tied to workflows. I know originally it was just so that you could use a workflow rule to create a ticket based on a template. But I don't know, a year, maybe 2 years ago, they actually added the functionality to just apply a template to a ticket based on a workflow rule. And that definitely added some much needed functionality there, where you could kind of let the ticket come in, let the workflow rule potentially see certain details on it first, and then apply the template after that. So, that was definitely, I feel like, a pretty good update as well to the service desk. Right. Gabe, you have a little bit more interaction with our partner base nowadays than I do. How many of them do you see that are using either auto templates or just type, subtype, and item when you do your check-ins?
There's a handful that do use them, but there is still a big chunk that don't. We always, just like mentioned here, we always make sure that they have them in place just for reporting and tracking purposes. It really makes a big difference down the road when you want to go back, say last year or even last quarter. What kind of ticket volume have I had come in? Using those types and subtypes, you can actually run a bunch of reports in PSA to show you the volume, how much hours are spent on it, so they can really spend time focusing on either updating hardware for customers or potentially finding a trading spot for the team. Perhaps there's a bunch of time being put into specific types of issues, and maybe there's some new guys who are putting in extra time. So you can actually see at a glance, all right, I need to focus more on trading for this particular type of issue. And you get all of that just from having your type and subtype set up, but just setting them up isn't the main thing. You actually have to be put onto the ticket itself, because without it being on the ticket, there's no way for ConnectWise to read what's going on. So yeah, process of having them placed on, but also having them built out and make them make sense for the team to use is always key.
No, I think that's a big one to make, not only just having them, but make sure that your techs are actually using them so that you can actually get the reporting out of them. That obviously is a big one.
Yeah, that could be, who knows, a year later, then comes to bite you on the butt because they're in place but were never used, and then you have to go back, and it's a big pain point at that time.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty huge cleanup step to try and go back and sort 3 years worth of tickets.
Yep.
I imagine, trying to tie this back to the round robin stuff we talked about initially, similar to a degree with making sure that your skills are set up. It's really cool that the round robin system can utilize that and try and make sure that the correct resources are getting automatically assigned to the correct tickets. But obviously, same idea. You have to make sure that not only do you have the skills set up in the system and then, of course, configured with the round robin pieces, but you also want to make sure that your techs actually have the skills that they know associated to them and, of course, updated. Because, for instance, if me and you were working on help desk, you were initially our big Office 365 guy. If I get trained up for it later, but we never actually update my skills in the system, you're still going to get all the Office 365 tickets, even if I'm capable of helping you with those. So, definitely something I imagine we'd want to make sure is not only set up, but especially the skill tree, I imagine we want to make sure that we do pretty regular updates on it. Granted, type, subtype, and item can run into the same thing as you start experiencing new issues and things like that. You add a new division that maybe helps with cyber. You obviously want to make sure that you get your types and subtypes updated for that one. Otherwise, again, same idea. We're not really going to be able to report on it quite as easily if we don't have those in place.
Yeah, it won't be as effective if it's not actually being used.
No, absolutely. So I suppose one of the other pieces I can ask about, it's always a popular one over here on the service desk, is how's everybody doing with time entry, right? Definitely one of those things that I know when I was doing implementations, that was always a hurdle to get over, get everybody putting time in the system. Do you see that when you do check-ins with folks, Gabe?
Yeah, it's always a big thing, is getting time in the system. It's there's so many ways to go about it, but the main thing is getting the time in there as soon as possible. You never want to wait till like the end of the week, just because then who knows if someone forgets what they did on a Monday and it's a Friday. So having some type of process for time entry is heavily advised. If anyone in the chat has any pain points around that, feel free to post in there. We can even try to go through some specific questions around time if anyone has that, as in like a pain point going on for you guys.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I have a hard enough time remembering what I did by the time I get to Friday, much less how long it took. I couldn't imagine trying to do time entry all one time a week.
There is also the stopwatch feature within tickets that you can use to track the time for you. And you can even track how many tickets you have actively using a timer with the stopwatch. Under the sales module, My List screen, there's a All Tickets tab in there. And that will show you a list of all your tickets that have an active timer. You can stop them from there, pause them, play them. Start it. So it's a good module to actually track what you have going on, is the My List view.
That would be real convenient, especially if you're working on both service tickets and projects, because it'll show all that in the same screen, right?
Yep, everything. And you can even sort out by tab. So it'll filter out projects to its own dedicated tab and also service tickets to its own dedicated tab. So you can toggle between them and set up custom views also to see like, yeah, I just want to see maybe priority 1 tickets on my list. You can set up a custom view to then save time from having to search or, create filters for it. You already have your preset filters within a view that you can then just toggle on.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like that My List view or My List screen is one of those kind of hidden gems. They tucked it away in sales, so I feel like a lot of the service guys don't really know about it. And having everything tied together by you being the assigned resource, I feel like really cleans up a lot of pieces for you in ConnectWise, assuming you're actually to the point where you're doing ticket assignments. Definitely something I always suggest very early on, even if you're not doing full scale scheduling. At least assign yourself to a ticket so that your name's on it. I get it if you're like a one-man shop, it may be less important to you, but I mean, as soon as you're at that 2 or 3 mark, just tell me that you're the one working on it, so the two of us aren't working on the same ticket in different directions.
Pro tip too, if your team or you guys are using the browser version of PSA, there is an option to pin tabs, like browser tabs, but if they are using the desktop client, you'll notice at the very top, like right under your name or right above your name at the top right of the screen, there's a little like thumbtack. If you click on that, you can actually pin your tabs that you have saved up top. So every time you go to log in, it'll have those pre-configured for you, preset. I would always recommend having the My List view up there as one of the pinned tabs, just because it's a shortcut to be able to see everything that you're tied to without having to go into the sales module and then find the actual screen. But yeah, it's a little thumbtack icon right around where your name is, but it's only on the desktop client.
No, it's pretty useful. And I definitely, when I was initially working the system, I did a lot of work in the PSA client itself. Super useful. There's a lot of really nice things about it. I did fall in love with the when you get the email and a ticket update and you click it opens it for you.
Yeah.
That eventually pulled me over to the browser because suddenly I had, the client open for 2 tickets and the browser open for 2 more tickets. And that kind of pulled me in a different direction a little bit. But I mean, both of them obviously work great. Of course, if you're playing with stuff like the either accounting interface or, like contact imports, obviously you're going to have to be in the client itself because those just don't have that same functionality over there in the browser. But I mean, Service Desk, obviously you can go both ways. The pin tabs is something that I do miss a little bit because every time I open it up over there in Crow, I have to start from scratch. Alrighty. Well, I do want to remind everybody that we do, of course, have our ConnectWise Mastery Series. In this case, we are, of course, focused on the Service Desk in this particular instance. Business management, of course, is going to be our new one that we've got here. We're running this for, at least until October, and we're going to be kind of bringing some of those extra pieces in. Want to make sure that everybody sees the QR codes so that you can continue to kind of sign up for these and really get to, go through, talk about your different questions, get the extra information that you're looking for, both from a business management standpoint and, of course, on the remote monitoring and management side as well. And other than that, I just wanted to go ahead and thank everybody for showing up. Hopefully you found today's session insightful and you picked up some new tips and tricks to play with. Like like I said, kind of last call for any questions, concerns, anything anybody has. But if that's it, I can go ahead and let everybody go for today. And again, thank you for coming.